Chris, what is our third main topic today?
Third one's from Ignacio. Hi, John and team. Colin Farrell has been one of my favorite actors since he did In Bruges. I'm excited for the Batman as much as anyone, but I feel like everyone has been ignoring the Penguin spinoff. I think it has potential to be just as good or better than the movie. Ferrell was just quoted as saying that the series will be getting an R rating for deeper violence. What do you think of the spinoff series going R-rated when the main movie, Batman, is sticking with a PG-13?
All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, listen, there's been a lot going on with Batman. A lot of Batmanisms going on. With not only do we have the Batman coming out, we got Michael Keaton's Batman coming in Flash and in the Batwoman, or Batgirl movie, I should say. We got the Batgirl movie. Ben Affleck is going to have his little goodbye swan song in The Flash. And then, of course, kind of flying under the radar has been another series that they announced, which was Colin Farrell's going to return as Penguin for an HBO Max series, which it made a lot of sense to me because I remember thinking, I heard initially that the Penguin doesn't actually have a huge role in this Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, which made me think, well, why go out and get a guy of the caliber of Colin Farrell for that? Then when we heard that they're going to be doing a TV series based on the character, then that made more sense because you got him now locked in for more projects, right? So that makes a lot more sense to me. So what would this Penguin movie feel like? Well, Colin Farrell was doing an interview and he kind of just talked about that a little bit, about the direction that this series could go. This is what Colin Farrell had to say. I still can't believe that's him, by the way. Anyway, his ambition and his vulnerability, his humor. I mean, it was just the tip of the iceberg in this film for me. But there were little moments in the scripts that Matt wrote in relation to Oz, that's Penguin, little bits of humor and awkwardness as well. And his origin. You know why he is the man and he is all that stuff. If we get 6 to 8 hours to do it, I just think the character could be endlessly fun and fascinating and brutal. I hear that we're going to be allowed to kind of do an R-rated version, perhaps, which would be nice to explore the violence that could permit, perhaps, and the darkness that could allow us to explore. And that comes to us again from Colin Farrell talking about his upcoming project of Penguin. This sounds exciting to me. Now, there's two things you need to point out, though. The Penguin is going to be a television series. It's going to be on HBO Max. TV series don't get rated R or PG-13 or PG. So it's like he's talking comparatively. Also, from everything we understand about the Batman, when you read the Batman's PG-13 rating for extreme violence, for all this kind of stuff, it doesn't sound like maybe Penguin would be all that far off from it either. But being on HBO Max, it does afford them a little bit of flexibility to go a little harder, maybe have some more blood squibs than maybe you'd have in the Batman, what have you. But everything that Colin Farrell here is talking about has me excited. I love what I'm hearing. Rob, you're hearing Colin Farrell's words here. You're talking about the depth he wants to go, where he comes from, maybe going a little more into the violence of this underworld that he kind of controls. What do you think about his words?
Dude, first of all, having read the initial reviews from people on this movie, a lot of these characters are in their prototype stages. They're newly minted villains. And it sounds like how Colin Farrell how the Penguin is being presented, to me sounds very intriguing. And it sounds like he has definitely a reason for doing what he's doing. He apparently works for Falcone. And maybe there's a void he wants to fill in his life. I think there's a lot of story to be explored there. And, you know, The Peacemaker would be an R-rated series, John. And HBO Max has already shown us where they're willing to go and what they're willing to do.
Yes.
So I'm just like dealing with the criminal, watching the rise of a criminal. If this was the new version of The Sopranos in Gotham City with the Penguin as Tony Soprano, come on. That could be awesome. And I love Colin Farrell, so bring it on.
By the way, how good the writer who wrote in the email mentioned In Bruges. How
so good.
How great is he? Not only he and In Bruges. I'm reminded of my favorite line thing. You don't know karate? Oh my God, I die every time that happens. First of all, Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Ralph Fiennes. I mean, it's just, if you guys haven't seen In Bruges, go watch In Bruges. You'll definitely be delighted that you did. And yes, you're right. Like I've read a lot about how in this movie he's kind of a lieutenant to Falcone.
Yeah.
But that then the series would be about his now ascension to taking over the underworld in Gotham, which to me sounds amazing if that's the case. Anyway, Chris, you're hearing Farrell's words here. Do you like what you're hearing? What stands out to you? What are your thoughts right now?
I do like this because if it is that story, right? Getting out from under Falcone's shadow and becoming the kingpin of the underworld here in Gotham, why would that not be violent? I don't know about y'all, but if I'm a crime boss, I'm not going to do it with like free candy and kisses. I'm going to, I'm going to knock some heads. So this makes sense to me. I mean, think about too, going back to something like Daredevil, how violent that scene was of Kingpin smashing that guy's head in, you know, with the door. And we didn't even see any of that. We allowed our imaginations to make that so much worse than it was. So on something like HBO, when you can take more liberties, like we've seen with Peacemaker, I think this is going to be outstanding. I still stand by he looks like Richard Kind. Weirds me out. Weirds me out so much. But I'm really excited to see what they do with this character because we've always seen him too as kind of this like monocle wearing kind of snooty dude. And I'm really excited to see him more as this kind of grizzled, torn up gangster. I think it's going to be really interesting.
You know what's funny? You talk about that image, right? Burgess Meredith set the template for our understanding of Penguin. And ever since, that's exactly who we picture as Penguin. When we think of Penguin, no matter how they've changed his iterations a bit in the comic books or portrayed him in some animated stuff or here, when we think of Penguin, we think of, like that's what we think of, right? We don't think of Cesar Romero. When Joker now comes up, we don't think of Cesar Romero. We don't think of that at all. When we think of Batman, we don't, R.I.P., we don't think of Adam West. When we think of Robin now, we don't think of, Dick Grayson portrayed in there. Ward, what was his name?
Burt Ward.
Burt Ward. We don't think of Burt Ward. But for whatever reason, that Burgess Meredith version of the Penguin is still kind of there. And that's what we think about, even though it's transformed. And maybe Colin Farrell's the guy to change our entire perception of the character. Yeah. Maybe he is. I don't know. Maybe he's not.
This has like a Scarface written all over it, I think.
I mean, that's a good observation because that is something that one of the producers kind of compared it to. He's like, basically he said, we're seeing the rise of Tony in Scarface. That's what we're seeing here with that. So
only with Cobblepot.
Only with Oz Cobblepot.
Striking fear into the hearts
face.
of Gotham.
Say hello to my little friend, his little rubber ducky. I don't know which way they go with it. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. What do you think about this, about what Colin Farrell is saying about his Penguin, about what the future of it is, how hard they could go in the HBO Max thing? What do you guys think about that? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.